request the President for the Forum for Democracy and Development, Madam President Nawakwi.
Colleagues, my brothers, Honorable Mike Mulongoti, my running mate, the FDD running mate, Dr. Clement Mwanza, our Secretary General for the People's Party, Mr. Lungo, and the Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Kasongo. Spokesperson, did you resign from the post?
No, Your Excellency,
we are missing you at the office. Honorable MP for Munali, honorable friends from Kanyama, Chawama, Munali, Mandevu, Lusaka Central, and our own Deputy National Youth Chairperson, Richard Ngoma. Honorable Councillors, our Mayor is not here. Eid Mubarak to all of you who are celebrating Eid today. And good morning, our friends from the Fourth Estate. I must apologize, we were delayed. You know, in the campaign season, just when you're about to get to the car, someone is at the gate. So my apologies, I didn't intend to keep you waiting and keep your honorable colleagues waiting. I'm truly honored today. For a long, long time, we have seen endorsements of other politicians, and they said to us, you are just jealous because you are not being endorsed. But you see why we waited. We waited for ideas, we waited for clarity of thought. It's not every endorsement that is valuable, and I think my brothers must learn from Madam Clinton. She was endorsed by one of the richest men in the United States, and she says, no, I shall not have that. Keep it. I think you recall that. A gentleman who runs one of the largest catering company, manufacturing companies, Mr. Cole. She turned down that invitation. I am so honored because this is a reconnection of ideas. We started together, as you have heard, at Garden House. We fought the fight. We won. When it came to 2001, a group of us got together and said, never again in our lifetime are we ever going to have 27 years, or as it was being proposed, continuous tenure of one person. We said we agreed to bequeath to ourselves 2 5-year terms. At that point, it didn't matter whether you were Minister of Finance, Minister of Works and Supply, or you were Vice President, and may his soul rest in peace, General Christon Tembo. I recall that it was myself, Honorable Mulongoti, Honorable Newton Nguni, and Ernest Mwansa, who walked to General Tembo's office. Can you imagine? We went to his office and said, sir, you have to leave. He says, why? He said, well, this fight won't work if you stay behind. And surprisingly, he didn't hesitate. He says, okay, have you talked to General Mianda? We said, well, when you agree, then we are going to the Minister of Education to talk to your brother. And we walked over to General Mianda and said, sir, you have to leave. And to their greatness, both then our leaders we looked up to as young ministers and politicians, they came along. They didn't care about the trappings of their offices. I wonder today, in the time that we live, if you can actually walk to a vice president's office and say, hey, let's go. I wonder today if you can actually go to a minister's office and say, colleague, let's go because there's a principle we have to stand by. That time, it didn't matter whether you had a house, whether you didn't have a house, you had to leave. and we left. And it was a brutal, I think, 2 or 3 months of fight, thanks to the civil society, thanks to the church, thanks to the men and women who are always on the side of the poor. I recall that in Kawe, when the police were about to arrest me, we were running with by a speed chase, and the Honorable Mulongoti was behind the car. When we turned, and he's the one who recalls how fast we were driving. When we turned and I went into the bush, I had the feeling that, well, I've left my child at home, I've left the kids at home, but I needed to do it. I needed to do it. And when I hid that day, and the police lit the bush when I was hiding, I knew that the system meant what they meant. But by God's prudence, I had been hiding in that thicket for over 3 hours, and the police were pacing around. I could feel that the whole area was surrounded. And the thought came to me, I said, they'll burn the bush. In my natural state, because I have many colors, I can camouflage myself. I changed my dress inside out, and I said, they'll be looking for Edith Nawakwi, who is immaculately dressed, but they will not be looking for a village girl. I left my shoes and sauntered across the road in between police officers and hid about 200 meters away. Exactly 20 minutes to the clock, the bush was lit concurrently around. It was about 5 hectares. I cried. I knew the regime meant business. That night I walked 15 kilometers not knowing where I was going. Finally I got tired about 3 a.m. and I sat down. You've never known this story because they thought that Edith was hiding somewhere. I walked 15 kilometers and finally I sat down and I said to myself, God, I want to see my daughter and I want to sleep in the house. As I stood up, opened my eyes, I saw a hut in front of me. I went there and cried for them to open. And an old man came out, walking on a walking stick, and I said, well, let me wake up my wife, and it was an old lady. And they told me they can't keep me. I really wept because I truly wanted to sleep in a home. Anyway, we walked for another 2 kilometers to do 1 kilometer to come to a Pastor Mugonki's house, who kept me and who then secured my return to Lusaka. And the most interesting part about that is that I called a reporter to connect me back. And this reporter had been saying to me, you know, ma'am, I'm sure you came for a press conference. I want you to understand why I stand where I stand. He had been trying to talk to me the way you colleagues tried to call me and I'm not responding to your call. And Manoa said one day, you know, I have keys to the cells. You always ignore my call. Here's my card. That day I called him, please. I knew they would be looking for someone to be called whom I know, maybe my husband. I called Manoa. I think he's Kenyan, now he's in the government in Kenya. And he's the one who reconnected me. But the most important thing is that there were 5 roadblocks between Kawe and Lusaka. And I was in a car, and Mr. Mtembonchito was driving, Sheikh Chifua was in that car, and Honorable Chifumu Banda. In the 5 roadblocks, the police were looking at me and they didn't see me. You can ask Sheikh Chifua. The last one was Karangwe. I said to my colleagues in the car, please let me hide in a boot. And Mtembonchito and Chifumu says, no, we are lawyers, we can't hide you in a boot. You sit here. We got to the roadblock, they would take this floodlight and light in my face, and they couldn't tell who Edith Nawakwi was. Pastor Mugongi had said, you are going to sleep in your house. He prayed before I left, and we said, amen. He took me to the roadside. When we were about to get in the car, Mutembo drove away. He says, they are coming back, and truly they came back to that point. You see, we don't believe as a party that fighting is what will deliver elections in this particular election. fact that the confusion in the enemy camp is God-given. If you go to the Bible, you hear that those who ganged against the children of Israel, they were tribes, they got together, they were completely destroyed. The blood that is being shed, and today as we speak, our candidate for Namwala has been taken back to theater for redoing the bones in her hand. You don't just shed his children's blood in vain. And it is that which we are pleading with our brothers. Lay down your arms, because this country fought for independence, and that time for fighting is gone. The only time homes were being burnt was cha-cha-cha. There is no cha-cha-cha now. The cha-cha-cha we have is poverty. And to fight poverty, we cannot fight poverty with broken limbs. We can only fight poverty if we as a people sit together, discuss on how we're going to get our minds back on our feet again. And how we're going to say to ourselves, for 51 years, the copper from the belly of our country has been exported. How do we make pebbles? The answers to that cannot come from Edith Nawakwi alone. It has to come from each and every son that is in this land, each and every daughter who lives in this land. And we can only discuss the future of our country when we are at peace. We can only discuss the future of our country when we stand up and discuss ideas. To date, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see, when I look at the TVs, I don't see that political parties are discussing ideas of how to get our people out of poverty. Even the adverts that you see are not adverts about how Shangombo is going to turn into a mega city. It's about how the past is like this. If you look at PF, they are showing you a building which has been done. It is not about what we are going to do to build more universities, to build more hospitals. It's not about what they are going to do to get that child in the trench out of the trench to take them to a classroom. When I look at the UPND, I don't see ideas. I hear about a 10-point plan, but I don't see it. Even the adverts now are saying, Sonta, to worship Wendalam. But what is our future? What is our future? It is that which worries me as a candidate in this election. I thought by now our people should be saying, for FDD, this is the policy on education, on agriculture. This is a policy which we like. And for UPND, this is the policy. For PF, this is the policy. But the people are not being given that opportunity. There's too much agony. There's too much fighting. I think even as late as yesterday, I was hearing that people are fighting. And for me, I want us to say thank you to Honorable Mulongoti for identifying us as a party that is standing on ideas which relate to people's livelihood. Poverty by its nature is like slavery. Poverty is a slavery. If you recall apartheid, it was based on control. And you are right. When the people are impoverished, you control their mind. You make them believe that as leaders, you are the benefactors. And it's basically for purposes of political power and control. There's a myth, I think, in Africa that governments have to continue forever in perpetuity. And the only way they can do that is, one, to plan for a very translucent election. Two, to hold people captive in poverty. That is not our belief. It's for that we as a party believe that decentralization is a key to eliminating poverty. And we are so committed on that that we believe that this year, when you give us the mandate, the first task is to get on a path to unyoke that yoke which people have around their necks. And that yoke is a yoke of poverty, which has taken away people's dignity, which has deepened inequalities. We need as a people to talk about the transformation of our families, transformation of our communities. And in that, we cannot do it if we are fighting. We need harmony, we need peace, we need love. And it is in love that you can unleash the creative potential of each one of us. We are very, very grateful that you found it fit to endorse what you have rightly said, the correct candidate. Your investment in us is not an investment in vain, it's an investment in the spirit of oneness, in the spirit of hard work, in the spirit that we dream that Zambia can be poverty-free, and in prosperity we can live as a happy people. Personally, I'll be much happier when the people give me the mandate to assist in rebuilding our country. I'll be much happier if I can sit back and say I was able to transform the life of a family, the life of a community, and the life of my country from poverty to prosperity. Thank you very much for coming. You see, we are saying eradicate poverty. We have a vision that Zambia can be poverty-free. We believe that Zambia can be poverty-free. And what is the root cause of poverty? We've defined it as over-centralization of government, and that is also the reason why we have massive corruption. All the monies are controlled by one or two people. I was a Minister of Finance, if I may remind you. And you spend under the hand and seal of the presidency. That's why the budget goes to the House. And if you read the opening of the minister's speech, it says, I am a bearer of the message from the president. The president is the person who spends that money, meaning allocation by parliament to ministries. And where do you experience the highest levels of theft and corruption? It is not in districts, it is at ministries. Ministry of Education has embezzled so many billions. Ministry of Finance, money has gone missing because the money is there. And you see, when you talk about the excessive powers of the presidency, it's not about the hammer, it's about how a president can spend so much money in trillion by whims of a pencil. And no wonder you see that our presidencies, successive presidencies, they have these open door policies to contractors going to residences of presidents. Simply because you can pick up a phone and say, hey, Minister Chikwanda, I'm sending a colleague there. You see that? Minister Kambwidi, can you do something there? And the contracts are now even being taken from directors to permanent secretaries, and ministers are presiding over that. Because of what? Because we have given too much powers to the presidency. So when you define what is that power, that power simply is the ability to state who gets what, where, and how. That's all. So when you take away that power in the way that we are proposing, that when the Minister of Finance goes to the Parliament and says, I'm allocating so much money to Nkeyema, you've immediately taken that power from the President to Nkeyema. And in Nkeyema, you have the MPs and the eminent persons there, councillors and everyone, who will sit in a development committee similar to a district parliament and make decisions. Many of you may not know that we as a party fought so hard to make sure that devolution was included in this particular constitution. We wanted to go further. They have taken the concept of chairmanship. We are the only ones who know how to further this program to devolve political and economic power to the grassroots. So we have defined, we say decentralize, use agriculture and energy, and we have also said that poverty is so endemic that we need to get our people, to give them that spark, to get them to be productive. And that's why we are proposing that for 3 years we give inputs for free. It's very clear, even in the rural areas. Yeah? Even when you go to Chama, they will tell you FDD policy is that for 3 years. They've understood, and we have said if you don't succeed in 3 years, even God will chase you when you go to heaven. So we are very clear. But when you say, Mr. Sinjera, that other people are discussing policy, I've tried to find the manifestos. I can find it. I've tried to find it. Other than we have a 10-point plan. We have a 10-point plan. And you see, I mean, I don't understand the plan. A plan is something which is concrete and written. You cannot, you know, those of us who did economics, you have a plan, and from a plan you have programs, and from programs you have projects. So a plan has to be clearly detailed, and if it's mining, you can't just say we'll create jobs. You need to understand that people have lost jobs. In one afternoon, they woke up, 2,000 jobs were lost. 2,000 homesteads had lost their livelihood, and they'll never get it back. What do you do then? You have to sit with the people, find out who can do what. It's not everybody who will go to farming. Some can go to cottage industries. Some are cobblers. Some are, they can make windows. But what can government do to get them to do that? If you look at how China was, it was exactly like us here. But when you go to China, you find that the estates where small scale or cottage industries, they manufacture their goods. They also have somewhere to display. And through that, you create competition and efficiency. But I am not comforted that you say other political parties have issues, but it depends. I mean, I saw one report Mr. Mwanza was bringing to my attention, where some reporters, some opinion polls are saying that UPND is very clear on agriculture. They've been giving inputs I haven't seen somewhere. They are taking our program and crediting it to UPND. But that's good, because we are always pioneers in FDD. And we like to lend ideas.